not to be controversial, but there's a lot more, I would say, entitlement
Okay.
of getting through the course to be successful. So yeah, okay, you're telling me all of this and you're giving me all of this information, but where's your current real life experience?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Skilled Personnel Network podcast. My name is Fodi Kyriakos. Delighted to have you back again. And today we have with us a good friend of mine, Graham Kelly. And well, where do we start? I'll tell you what, I won't start. I'll let you start, Graham. Lovely to have you on board. Graham, tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
Yep, so my name's Graham Bannister Kelly. I'm a consultant radiographer working within the Midlands.
Fantastic. Graham, we've known each other for quite a while, and when we spoke about the the last person I knew for 20 years, and then we were trying to say we were 5 and 6 when we met each other, but we were clearly lying. So, but we've known each other pretty much not far off that. I guess that's a good place to start, really. Graham, we met when I set up Rig Reporting. You had commenced at that point your reporting course. I'm going to go a bit more before that. So what I want to do is find out a little bit more about what got you into the profession. As you know, one of the big themes for us with the podcast is CrossRoADS and also routes to radiography. I'm quite keen to understand from you, Graham, what got you into the profession, what was the segue for you, and kind of those little trigger moments.
Yeah, of course, no worries. So I'd say I was a typical leaving school kind of person, then going to college and then to university. So a generic kind of pathway with that. But what 16-year-old really goes, I want to be a radiographer? You know, most of the time you haven't even heard of it. Maybe times have changed, I don't know. But
was that the case
when
with
I
you?
was a
Had you heard of
16-year-old,
it? No.
if you'd have asked me who's the person taking the x-rays, I wouldn't have known that it was an actual job of its own right. So, I mean, obviously I'd had x-rays myself, broken some bones, this, that, and the other, but never really thought of it as a career. I think like most kids, you look at all the fancy jobs, don't you, like really high powered, lots of pay, all of that. Then there's a moment of realization of what that actually entails. And that's not to diminish any of the jobs that we do, that because, you know, but I was always a very practical person and pragmatic, which that led to many conversations when I took philosophy, believe it or not, in college, and my philosophy teacher said that I was too pragmatic for it. So I was like, I'm taking that as a win anyway. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with that. I enjoyed sciences and natural sciences, and believe it or not, I wanted originally to be a weatherman. And it's a far cry, I imagine, from radiography. But actually, the crux for me was I had some problems with both my shoulders, and I attended for an MRI scan, and there was the typical SOR poster of ever thought of becoming a radiographer, and it worked on me. So I went then to my local hospital, got some work experience. Nothing was really, makes me sound really old, but nothing was really online those days. So you had to like ring somebody or go and talk to somebody. And the UCAS book to get into uni was a book. It wasn't an online thing. And so I didn't realize how much or how little work experience I needed to do to be successful. So I was like, I'll do every week. I have a period within college where I could do this, that, and the other. They were like, no, just come for a week, calm down. And then ever since then, it was like, yeah, this is right. You know, it's got that mix of science, technology, people, and a product at the end of it. And, you know, it's almost like nice little bits of art.
Absolutely.
And then it just, you go from there, don't you?
Sorry.
It's all right.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we should tell the society more posters then, because that worked for you. So more,
Yeah,
you know, that,
exactly.
you know, you know, I know it's 15 years probably between. In fact, what year are we talking here? So let's go. Let's get some timelines, Graham.
Okay. So that was when I started my degree. That was 2005.
Oh, okay.
So it's 20 years next year that I started training.
Crazy.
Scary.
Wow. When
And how it's all
definitely.
changed. I trained on old film,
Yeah.
even in 2005.
Yeah. And where did you train, mate?
In the Midlands, I trained at Birmingham City University, and I was placed at then a local hospital there.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So let's fast forward slightly, but we're going to go. We're
Mhm.
going to sort of think about your time in university as a student. Um, ever any sort of moments, any doubts, any sort of challenges during that time? Is this for me? Am I cut out for this?
And again, I think one of the nuances to pick up on straight away is it was commissioned then as well. So your degree
Yeah.
was free.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. We spoke about that before, actually.
but
Yeah.
you worked for it. The amount of time off, like for say summer holidays and things like that, was very different to what it is now. Because these guys are paying for their course, or I know there's bursaries and loans and stuff in to supplement, but they've got to go to work potentially as well to help supplement everything as well. Whereas
Yeah.
I always saw it as though, yeah, okay, my degree's free, but I'm working for this degree, and
Mm.
I'm there just like everybody else, and you work every shift pattern you can. And then I'd go to my little Saturday shop job, 9 till 6, and then especially then in my later years, I'd go and do then a night shift with the radiographer after that, to get that different level of experience. And don't get me wrong, there's wobbles along the way, and even though I've had an academic career as well, I struggled with the academic side initially, and um, a few of my trainees are quite shocked at when they're like, "Oh, well, you must have had a first degree to be doing what you're doing, this, that, and the other." It's like, no, no, no. I was far off a first degree, but you were 18, 21 at the time as well. So sometimes it's the odd different bit of life that you want to experience as well, isn't there?
Oh, 100%. And how, as an academic now, how do you experience that sort of? How do you relate to that experience you had as a bursary,
Mm.
radiographer that did it under the bursary, under commission, versus those that are doing it now? And what kind of? I mean, obviously, like you said, it's a very different learning environment to what it was, in 2005, let's say.
Yeah, definitely. I think certainly then the demographic of the student has changed. And at the time, I think, if I remember correctly, I was working as a lecturer at a university when commissioning changed, and the demographic of the student changed as well. So especially like your ratio of mature students to like college leavers.
Yeah.
Um, Sorry, what was the other bit of the question? I can't. I
Yeah,
sidetracked thinking about
no,
that.
that's all. Yeah, yeah. No, it was kind of the experience of, as an academic, when you're lecturing and doing your work, what kind of are you sort of seeing as the big fundamental
Yeah.
differences between, you as a student and now?
There's, not to be controversial, but there's a lot more, I would say, entitlement
Okay.
of getting through the course to be successful. And I don't know if it's because the courses run differently and stuff these days, but we became part of the departments properly, and you would socialize with the people. And I know obviously the pandemic has really hampered some of those kind of interactions and whatever in these latter years, but um, you were part of the environment. And I remember from my own experiences of being a student and then being a lecturer, some of the things that I didn't like was how are you, if I'm a student, how are you staying current to the lecturers? So yeah,
Mm.
okay, you're telling me all of this and you're giving me all of this information, but where's your current real life experience? And I don't want to diminish anybody that doesn't do any clinical activities anymore that is a lecturer.
Yeah,
But I found that for me, when I became a lecturer and all of my modules were clinically based, it was really important to be still practicing, still
yeah,
doing. And I made sure that, like with my reporting elements, that I kept that up clinically as well, because you never know when you don't want to lose the skills that you've obtained, because you never know where they're going to lead. You don't know what other opportunity is going to come up. Not that you're necessarily looking all the time, but you don't know what it's going to lead to. Yeah, so that
yeah.
there's a big culture, I'd say, big culture shift within student dynamic and clinical dynamic these days. I wouldn't be able to put my finger on it as to why, but a 16, 18-year-old in 2005 is going to be very different to an 18-year-old in 2024, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm forever amazed at how this generation are far better than I guess I'm going to say we. I'm a bit older than you, Grant, but sorry to lump you in with me. Actually, trying to get a work-life balance because I don't think I'm getting better. I think as a parent, but I think I was particularly um, bad at giving myself some slack when it came to to that. Whereas I think this generation are better. We could probably learn from them. And actually, I think what that warrants,
It's
you know,
very different, isn't it? Very
yeah,
different.
yeah, no, I
And I
totally
think
agree. And I think, sorry, Karen.
so I think, like, and again, it depends, I think, on where you are within your life as to where you start your journey within it as well. Because, I was 18 and I lived at home. I didn't even have to move out to go to university because the hospital was down the road from where I lived. So it didn't make sense financially. And yet, you can throw yourself into it completely, can't you? Because you've got
Mm,
actually no real responsibility at that stage in your life. And that's not the same for everybody. Obviously, you can't say that every 18-year-old hasn't got responsibilities. But, you compare that then to somebody that's taken on £9,000 a year, um, student fees, trying to balance work, study, clinical, everything. And like you say, I think there is a more emphasis on um, work-life balance, and
mm.
I don't know. I think maybe for some of us older ones, it doesn't feel that comfortable in a way, because it almost feels as though they're not putting enough work in, which isn't necessarily the case, is it at all? As
No.
long as they're still obtaining and getting there, then, like you say, actually they're the ones that have got the balance right already.
And I think it warrants a new sort of almost a complete revamp on the workforce planning as because there is an emphasis on flexibility. There's an emphasis on
Yeah.
certain people wanting to work certain shifts and
Mhm.
and mucking in and inclusivity and there is it completely is, and this is the challenge I think of the NHS actually, that from a workforce planning perspective it's still trying I can tell it's trying, leadership is trying to understand and empathize, but I think because they're working on different workforce models, it kind of they fight each other, the workforce um
It's a
rotas
difficult
and
balance to
tradition.
match, and I know it from my
Yeah.
own side of trying to manage, my element of service management and myself. Like, again, like, so when I was a newly qualified radiographer, you worked every shift that you were just given, and you didn't. Well, yeah, you complained, but you didn't. You still did it. I I'd never heard of flexible working. That wasn't a thing. It was more of a, oh, well, they've got an agreement because they've got some kids. kind of thing. It was never like an official kind of thing, or never, in my mind, it never was. And now, I think nearly everybody I know is on a flexible working. But that does come then with the complexities of, okay, we need services. We need our staff to be happy and well, and, to be able to have that home life balance. But there still is also then the pressure coming in of a 24/7 acute service that you've got to try and balance with that. And it's difficult. It's a bit of a minefield.
Yeah, definitely. And we can try and unravel some of that as we go along the call, but not to answer every challenge in this call, Graham. I'm keen to learn, mate. When did you know? How far into your time as a qualified radiographer did you know you wanted to get into radiography? Because bear in mind, just before you answer that, we're going out to a global listener base, and to many, they still won't be aware that radiographers in the UK report. So it's just just sort of it's as you sort of answer your question, just have in mind that this is not the norm for many of our listeners.
And I think I've experienced that myself, because I did set up an international exchange program with a Canadian university when I was a lecturer, and we got to go out and experience what it's like for radiographers elsewhere, and practice varies, shall we say, quite a lot. And I think in the UK, we've been able, as a radiographer, to take complete advantage of the shortage of radiologists. Because, and just as I do, Foddy, these days, that without the progression of the workforce, the NHS within radiology would have fallen apart completely. It would not function. I'd like to say there was this shining bright moment of when I thought I was going to become a reporting radiographer. And even then as well, we didn't really, in my sphere anyway, we didn't call it advanced practice or anything like that. Those terms didn't really exist again almost. But it was just, you're a reporter. But I had an incredible mentor that was already a reporting radiographer. So actually, when you look at timelines of things, they were quite ahead of their time, really. And we would spend time reporting with them. And I think I just realized that I'd got an affinity for it, because I think, with any kind of job, any kind of career, it's important, I think, to learn and to assess where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. And it doesn't necessarily mean that a weakness is a bad thing, but you can then take advantage of the things that, do you know what, I'm good at this. So how do we pursue this kind of thing? And again, rightly or wrongly, and I know it still happens, because I had expressed interest in it, I was qualified, and the other reporting radiographer, they must have seen something in me as well. When an opportunity came available for, we've got some money from somewhere to send somebody on a reporting course. Graham, do you want to do it? Now, these days, that wouldn't fly at all. A job's got to go out. It's got to go through 17 different layers of bureaucracy just before you can even get there, which I agree with to a point. And then within 18 months, I was on the reporting course. And
wow.
But that's one of the things that I've always taken then with me, that just because you're a junior member technically of the team, it doesn't mean that you can't progress into whatever particular area that it is. Because I've always been very anti longevity within a role means something.
Yeah.
And what does it mean? Okay, well, you stay put. Well done. And people do that for all hosts of reasons, and and that's perfectly fine. But whenever I've then been employing people for reporting jobs, or when I was working at the university helping run the courses and stuff, I try and interject those kind of bits that, okay, yeah, they're only a couple of years qualified, but so was I. Doesn't mean that you can't do it. For's and against, I suppose. But
I really like what you said there, because I think sometimes there is this mindset that tenure, will. In fact, I would say that arguably, even though you can't legislate for experience, the idea that you have to be in a role a certain amount of time, I think has led to some of the challenges we've had in promotion into roles. It's like, well, that person's been there long enough. That, you know, they're next in line. Not that they are potentially the most
Yeah,
suitable
exactly. It's like,
qualified.
why is it next in line? What have you demonstrated that makes you suitable for
Yeah,
that job or that position or that change? And again, with all of this, I'm a firm believer that if you go to just the simple banding system, and I don't really like the banding system because it makes us all a bit, well, you're a band 6. It's like, no, I'm a senior radiographer. I'm not, don't denote me by my
yeah,
pay, because it's multifaceted. But to relate it to that, if you want somebody, to me, if you want a band 6 job or you want a band 7 job, whatever it may be, well, then you should be trying your best to be working at that already, so that you
yeah,
can go into an interview and go, oh, I've got this experience, this experience, this experience. Because otherwise you can only go in with the job that you're already doing.
yeah,
So how are you
yeah.
going to then demonstrate, take a chance on me? I can do it.
Yeah, I mean, some interesting things here. So, I mean, Graham, without making you too controversial, you are always someone who's pushed boundaries. That's how I've always known you, and I think in many ways, I'd say to testament to you really, because you're now you saw a consultant practitioner position and you went for it.
Mhm.
What was the process with what was the process with that? You kind of you you must arguably, and I probably don't have any stats on this, but speaking about this idea of time, how much experience you might have had at the time, you may well have been at the time one of the youngest people to become a consultant radiographer, right? I hadn't thought of it like that, but
And that
the
that that comes with some of the problems, though, um, of what we were just talking about, of longevity within a career or whatever. And all the way back though, when I became a lecturer, then I was 25, and
yeah,
that was 2012. Yeah, and again, like I say, because there was a bit more of a diversity within the student cohort then, I did
yeah,
get pushback from some of the mature students of,
right,
well, what do you know? And it's like, well, what? And they would openly ask you in a lecture of, well, what's your experience of that? And sometimes you have to keep your keep your cool in those situations. But it's like, well, I'm qualified, you're not. So I've got more experience than you at this point in time, and let's learn together. um, but yeah, and I think yeah, it does. It does. I think there's that natural bit of somebody's been in the job 20 years already, and then they've become
yeah,
a consultant, a bit like what you were saying, well, they've done their time,
mm,
kind of thing, haven't they? And I think, if I'm really honest, I wasn't happy in the job that I was in, and the opportunity came available.
yeah,
But again, I'm a firm believer that you make your own luck, though, as well. The
yeah,
people from the outside will look at whatever you've done, and if you're successful in any way, and they'll be like, oh, well, I didn't get those opportunities. And it's not necessarily that you didn't get the opportunities, but were you ready when the opportunity presented itself?
mm,
And if you're
yeah,
not ready at that
yeah,
time when the opportunity presented itself, okay, well then understand, go away, find out what you can do. Or how do you feel about that? Because actually, if you're not bothered, well, then that's not necessarily the right path for you to go anyway. Whereas actually, if you're gutted that you can't go for the job or you've been rejected for it, okay, well then see what can you do so that when the next opportunity becomes available, that you're in the right place yourself to be able to go for it.
yeah. And here's the other thing, Graham, because if I think about your initial experience with your mentor, who was a reporting radiographer,
Mhm.
it wouldn't necessarily. So there can be some occasions, and I've witnessed it with people I've spoken to throughout sort of my career advising radiographers, is people can underestimate the responsibility that's in place. But if you've got, I mean, but it doesn't matter. Age doesn't dictate maturity. And if you've got a decent mentor, then you absolutely can understand what you're getting yourself in for. Because one of the questions might be, if you're 2 years qualified and a reporting radiographer position comes up, are you aware of the responsibility? But actually, I'm pretty confident you would have been. I mean, obviously, it's a massive responsibility, but I'm sure it was all the things that you had considered and factored in.
Yeah, and like I say, there's the duality of it, isn't there? Like you say, that I was able to sit with this person and see the good and the bad. When an error came through, what was the process of error reporting? What it was like to deal with different people within the hospital that are questioning either your report or questioning your process at very senior levels. So, I'd got not my own personal experience of it, but I'd witnessed other people's experiences of it. So I wasn't blind. And I knew, especially at that time, there was a lot of radiologist pushback. And in all honesty, you had to be a strong individual to get through. And that's one of the things I've really taken with me when setting up the reporting service where I am now, that changes automatically with me, that they will be supported, they will be given the designated time, because that's what my experience was. And I always hated it when I was a student or whatever, and the situation wasn't good or whatever, and then the person that you're with would say, well, that's what we went through, therefore you should go through it. It's like, what? Why?
Right.
Did that make you better? No, it made you bitter. So, let's let's stop that cycle and, give everybody as much
So
opportunity as possible.
It's so true. I mean, it doesn't make you. Oh, do you know what? We must capture that moment. It doesn't make you better; it makes you bitter. Oh, but you're right. Just because that was the experience. I mean, so certainly one of the things that I would say about perhaps the conversations you and I have had, Graham, sort of, along the last say five or so years is I've always seen you as someone that does want to challenge the status quo, and innovate and push continuous learning and CPD. So talk us through that element of your career, mate. What what is it in particular that makes you really drive for those kind of things? I mean, other than just, I guess, the standard stuff of, wanting to continue your, continuously learn and improve. What other things drive you like that, mate?
Well, I think it's a bit like what you were just alluding to there, that you can give gratuitous answers, can't you? If I want to be the best that I want to be, kind of thing. But enough is never enough. We don't know everything, do we? And if you stop, well, then you stop, and it's a lot harder to get going again. And I would say to anybody within any of this, you've got to get ready for, sounds cliche, but feeling comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because you're never going to know everything. And I think that drives me, that you've got to keep pushing. And then also, it's complex, isn't it? You've got to revisit to make sure that your foundations are still strong, because as we all know, if your foundations aren't strong, you can't build. And I think there's this innate, probably inferiority complex, that I'm not a doctor and I don't have a medical degree. So you always, I think, kind of feel like you're playing a bit of catch up. And so that then when somebody does come and question you, you've got that little bit of knowledge that you can just go, aha, I do know what I'm on about, honestly. And I think that's changing over time, that kind of thing, because it's a lot more accepted and it's a lot more well respected these days that we do know what we're on about. But the more information, the more knowledge, not only me, and again, obviously, I've got that link with education, But the better your team's knowledge is, the better the radiographer's knowledge is as well, the better the outcome for the patient, because we're all patients at some point. And I want to work in a department where I'd be happy to go to, that's got a strong knowledge base, that if something's not going right, that they know how to change it, they know how to adapt, rather than just be a button pusher and go, oh, well, yeah, everything's on, well done.
Yeah.
Or, whatever the situation may be. And I think it breeds itself then as well. When you start those cycles going of getting education going, getting CPD going, a lot of people become more hungry for it. Now, that's like 90% of people. Obviously, there's the people that don't want to, and that's perfectly fine. But it all sounds a bit cliche, but it's the most important thing after qualifying, that you keep learning, because it does confuse me a little bit sometimes that, okay, I qualified on DR, but I learnt on CR and I learnt on plain film. And, I've worked with people that trained on plain film only, and then all the new technology came in. It's like, well, where is the education for anybody nationally on how to use the equipment, apart from an app specialist coming and going, press this button? So, yeah, but what happens when I press this button? Oh, no, you don't need to know that. Just press this button. So, no, all right, let's go away. Let's do some CPD on this. Let's learn together. It's always then ready for, not necessarily always ready, that's probably the wrong thing to say, but how do we make things better? How do we adapt? How do we change when things don't go according to plan? Because if you don't know what you're doing from the outset, you can't adapt. You can't change. You can't rectify things. And I think it's fundamental. So even when I'm out teaching postgrad students, every session they still teach me something that I don't know.
The
and it took me a long
mentor-mentee
time
switches
to get
over,
to
doesn't
grip.
it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, for want of a better term, you can, within the reporting team, just speaking of that, one person will be a bit better at this and one person will be a bit better at that, and you can almost kind of like plug each other's gaps a little bit, and you can learn off each other. And again, just because you've been doing it a long time doesn't necessarily mean you know everything there is. So you've just got to keep going and keep going.
Definitely. And do you know, interestingly, Graham, I mean, when I set up the Skilled Personnel Network, the platform, I actually had in mind people like yourself that really, for example, when we spoke about education courses and being able to develop new education courses, is the idea that we could support some of that stuff, because there is only, as we described before, is there's only one of us, but if we could develop ways and means of supporting each other with some of the stuff that people like to do, that keeps everything interesting, that keeps the juices flowing, so to speak. So part of
and I think
sorry,
it's difficult, this, isn't it? Because I'd say I'm in a fortunate position where I am job planned, and I get input in my job plan, and I get protected time to do everything that I do. And that then comes with a level of responsibility as well, that then you help reinforce these things then back into the rest of the department. And it's always seen, I think, as a luxury, CPD education. And yet it's the underpinning knowledge of everything that we do. Why is it a luxury?
Completely agree.
Getting people through the door, all right, you might be meeting your targets, but what was the quality of that service? Not just the quantity. And because I don't want to then sit there and go, suboptimal examination, cannot see this, cannot see that, and give a rubbish report. And it's every single level. And I think nationally, it's probably a little bit of one-upmanship of a lack of communication amongst ourselves of how can we collaborate better to do projects, to do research together, do educational activities together. Then the business side starts to come into things, and then it gets all very messy when you start to talk about pay. And I think it starts to unravel a little bit, unfortunately, but it's unnecessary, I think, and so much more could be done if it was like more of a co-op. And you could progress things, I think, a lot better, especially postgraduate wise. And I don't mean postgraduate as in just like reporting courses or advanced practice or whatever it is, but just after qualification.
I think, Grant, there's much more of there's much more that can be done between industry and the NHS and clinical around and academia around support for CPD. I mean, I'll give you a quick example. I met last week a radiographer who was 1 year qualified. He came up from Yorkshire down to London. He, in order to attend this event, which thankfully was free, but in order to attend this event, he had to book his own time off. He had to book his own hotel, and he had to effectively book his own travel. Now, I mean, I don't know what that would have cost him, but it would have been upwards of 300 quid, I'm sure. And for me, but he, when I sort of asked him, and he's definitely someone I would want to interview just to kind of understand his motivations, because I'll tell you, at this event of 1,000 people, I think barely 5-10% of them were radiographers, and I think that's the failure of leadership. And I get it's hard, and there'll be some pushback, and I understand it. I get it; it's difficult, but it's a failure of leadership that we're not encouraging more radiographers. Because when I asked him, how did you find the event, he said absolutely fantastic. He was like, he went back into work the following day, really sort of buzzed up and
that's what you need,
inspired.
isn't it? You need that buzz. You need that buzz around it to get things going. Now, I think fortunately we've been able to capitalize on my previous history of being a lecturer and understanding as well some of the funding channels, should we say, of being able to get these things going. And again, I'm in a fortunate position, and because of my previous experience, I've been able to pretty much kind of take over the education side of things within radiology. So then we've got direct routes to CPD funding that we can draw down. How do you capitalize on student income that we all generate? How do you capitalize on CPD money that's made available from the NHS? Who do you need to apply to? I would like to say in our trust now within radiology, it's almost, I'd like to say, a given that you're just going to be able to go. We'll apply for the funding from the hospital. There's a pathway. You apply through the appropriate channels. Yes, there is still, so as me a sign off, does it meet trust values? Does it meet the direction of the department? I can't say, as fun as it would be to send you on a crochet course, is it going to directly affect the department? Probably not. You never know. It might. You never know. If you can sell it to me, then I'll sign it off. It's fine.
Here's a sweater with an X-ray on it.
And I think that's where, yeah, exactly. But I think that's where people or departments actually fall down. And I think actually when you start to unpick some of that, I'd probably say some of these people have been in these jobs longer than I've been a radiographer. And what we said, that longevity doesn't necessarily mean anything within any kind of job or any kind of position. And do they even know that these opportunities and stuff are available? Do you have the network of your practice educator facilitators, all those kind of things? Now, I know that the NHS threw loads of money at practice educators, which we'd already got a job out, and I'd got somebody employed before we'd even done that, because we'd won the case to show the necessity for these things that especially our nursing colleagues had for a very, very, very long time. And it pains me to hear little stories like that of that these people have to go and do that. And I don't think you should have to be a pioneer to go on a CPD course.
Mhm.
And yeah,
Yeah.
what goes on with how people are trained on their reporting courses and the level of support that they just don't get. And I'm like, you're experiencing what I experienced in like 2008, 2009, 2010. Well, that's 14, 15 years ago. Why have we not changed? Why is it not progressed? And I always get like these lovely comments back from when our students first go to the university environment, and they come back and go, "Ooh, we've got it quite good here, haven't we, with the level of support and what we get given for our training?" And I'm like, yeah. But to me, that should be standard. You know, if you're putting
Yeah.
somebody on a reporting course, give them the opportunity to succeed. Don't make them be
Yeah.
doing their training at 12 o'clock at night when they're on a night shift. You know, it boggles my
Yeah.
mind. It really does.
You know, it's so interesting, Graham. I mean, this debate could carry on long into tonight. But one of the things I would say to you is that this I would argue that the type of training, because I hear it often said that when it comes to CPD funding, other AHPs, for example, physios and nursing, seem to just get more opportunity for it. That may be that there may be some truth in that, but actually, I do wonder now. You know, you said what you said, that you know, is there arguably a learning like a webinar or a course around how something simple like how to apply effectively for
Yeah,
CPD? Because I would argue that's more important than some of the other stuff.
yeah, definitely. Because if you haven't got the route to be able to get access to the money to be able to do the CPD, you know, that's the end goal, the CPD, isn't it? The education, the whatever. But if there's no process beforehand, how do you become successful? And
If you're a
I don't know,
department,
some of the complexity, isn't
sorry,
it? The different hospitals work differently.
yeah,
And I know you'll be able to give your lived experience of that. But even if it's not 100% correct for the hospital that somebody else is then working at least then the dialogue is happening. And I think people get stuck on, it doesn't happen, does it? It just doesn't happen. We won't get that. Yeah, but have you asked? Have you tried?
yeah,
You know,
yeah, exactly.
go and ask. You know, there might be pots of money that you've got no idea exist that you can take advantage
Yeah,
of.
God, yeah. And you know, I would say if you're a radiology department and the your team or your staff aren't necessarily getting the CPD that they require, and you know there's this moment that HCPC come up and spot audit one of your radiographers. You know, I think yes, it's responsibility of individual to do it, but you know, how much can you actually say that you supported? You know, not you, but that department had supported that particular individual to give access to it. So you know, I think there's
And I know
lots to
I'm
it.
a professional and it's my job, but when we are talking about work-life balance, why does it
Yeah.
all have to be done in my time? I already
Mm.
do beyond, all of us do all beyond what we're contracted to do. Now, again, luckily I work in a very supportive environment, to be fair, around
Yeah.
education.
Yeah.
And but you know that that's not common practice. And yeah, when when that cycle comes around, how do you truthfully say what your CPD is? And how do you own
Yeah.
that? And how has that benefited yourself and the patient? Yeah, interesting. It's very interesting. I don't understand why it's not valued. Enable
Well,
people You know the saying
Yeah,
is that, enable people to leave your department, to make an
yeah,
environment that they don't want to leave.
correct.
You know,
Exactly.
again, it sounds cliche, doesn't it? But it's really important. So when you're weighing up a change in direction,
Yeah.
that factor is really quite high. And I know within my own career trajectory, when you are talking about, do I go this way, do I go that way, or do I stay on the same path? You weigh up then all of that past experience and what that department has given you. It's a completely selfish, and it should be, I think, a completely selfish decision making process. And yes, there's life factors coming in of, can I move? Do I need to move? And all of those complexities. But I know when I went into a lecturer job that where I was working at that time, it was not right for me. I wasn't
Mhm.
I wasn't strong enough as an individual to fight those fights then that I needed to fight to get what I needed to be a successful reporting radiographer. And I think if you looked from the outside of, well, why then go into lecturing? That's not clinical at all. It's like, yeah, but it afforded me time to research.
Yeah.
It afforded me time to go out and see my students, to practice still, to be able to then have a duality of clinical and academia, and still reporting, still teaching on the reporting courses. So you're maintaining your currency, um, which then again, it leads to other things. And I know I've said to you before, but just say yes. If an opportunity comes along, just say yes, do it, because you never know where it's going to lead. You might not be
Yeah.
good at it, but at least then you know that you're not good at it, and then it can help funnel things down for you. Because there's always some element of learning, isn't there, out of a situation, even if it's a really bad situation. You've learned maybe where your limits of resilience are. Um, but what you can do well and what you can't do well, it's just as important. I think we see a lot of these things as failure, and it's not failure at all.
No,
It's just learning about
exactly.
your own boundaries and your own parameters.
Yeah, well, you've definitely answered for me, Graham, the crossroads question. What do people do when they get to that crossroads question? I mean, if the opportunity to say yes, then say it. And also, if it's not this isn't a measure on colleagues and peers and management, but actually, rather than waiting for someone to say to you, "Hey, it's your time," knocking on the door, actually just go out and do it
Yeah,
yourself. Go out and because it's not
yeah,
and that's the selfish bit that you speak about. It's not selfish in
mm.
a sense of pulling the ladder up on colleagues. It's actually you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't.
If you don't, yeah, exactly. And take this with a pinch of salt. But I worked with a fellow colleague that said it's easier to say sorry than it is to gain approval. I'm not saying that you should use that as a mantra, but because you could get yourself into some hot water if you went down that track completely. But I think there is this fear that putting
I
yourself
love that.
forwards will mean that there'll be ramifications, and why
Yeah.
should there be? As long as you're not going to hurt anybody, or or any of those million caveats that you could put in there. Um, Go and do it. And because, like I say, you never know what that opportunity will afford, and what skills and what experiences you'll be able to draw upon then potentially in another interview, or whether it's in the NHS or not, whatever it may be, whether it's radiography or not, it doesn't matter. You never know what that will afford you then later on.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Well, you know what? We've we probably need to do another one to get really deep into the consultant practitioner role. But I've got two more questions for you, Graham. One of them is
No, I can tell.
no, no. So can I. So can I. I excuse me. What I was going to say was what would you advise people thinking about coming into the profession now? What's the profession look like, and what's the what could we what could someone expect to become by being a radiographer? Like, what, where can their career go?
Mm. Your career is up to you, I would say. We'll start with that point. It's
Okay.
so one of my science teachers, who I really respected as a kid, said to me, "Oh, so what are you doing now then?" I saw them at the hospital and they were chatting. I said, "Oh, I'm a student radiographer." And he went, "Oh, I thought you were going to be more than that." And you're like, "Oh, cheers, thanks." And it's like,
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
love to now, completely being a bit of a thinking about it, going, well, look at me now, because, but, at that point in time, consultant practice didn't exist,
No.
so times change, don't they? And I think be prepared. I say to work. I know that sounds silly, but it's not a 9 to 5, and
No.
there's a complexity, and I've always said it. There's a complexity of the differing value. No, sorry, the differing level of almost care, not necessarily care. That's the wrong word. Sorry, interaction with patients that you're going to have, and then staff. You don't get long to meet your patient for them to then instantly trust you. And if you're in an acute, say, like trauma kind of setting, when they're not at the best of their life and they're in pain, and you're probably going to do something that's not necessarily going to be comfortable, shall we say, or and then the flip side, they're coming in from a different route and they're scared to death that this chest x-ray is going to mean the worst for them, and you've got a couple of minutes with them, and you've got to get them to trust you and to value that experience that you've just had and the collective experience. And I think people going into the job should understand, actually, it was only a 2-minute experience for you taking that x-ray potentially, but it's life-changing potentially for somebody else. And you might not ever see them again. You might not ever get to know what happens to them. So there can be a lack of that circle closing, which you have to get used to as well. And that dynamicness of being able to switch within situations from, well, I'm doing an ITU portable now, to, well, I'm doing a chest x-ray on the GP side. Your communication skills have got to be very, very adaptable. And sometimes, I mean, it still sticks in my head. And I remember there was a guy, that elderly chap, obviously just wanted a bit of a chat. And the department was horrendous. And I'm like, what's more important at this point in time? Getting these people through quick, or listening to this guy's World War II story? And for me, it was more important to talk about that World War II story, than bang, 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 get them through, get them gone, get them through, get them gone. So anybody going into the profession today, due to technology and due to target pressures, there's a bigger expectation, I'd say, on quick, not necessarily quality. And I think you'll have a more fulfilling day and a more fulfilling career if you talk to your patients and you learn about your patients, because then you'll be more empathetic. And then, you can have an actual proper positive impact on that 2 minutes.
Yeah.
We joke all the time that we just push people back to like A&E if it gets a bit difficult or whatever, but there is an inherent complexity within that. And you've got to be a people person. You've got to be a people person. I've seen students come through going, I didn't think I had to touch a patient. It's like, yeah, and you're going to have to clean stuff up as well. So get ready.
Well,
go get the experience. Go get work experience.
Yeah, well, but it's good. It's good to understand that what you've just described there, which is the merry-go-round of a day that you can have as a radiographer, and that in itself creates the variety. Not one day is ever going to be the same.
No,
Um,
no.
and
And even though my day is like half reporting, half other stuff, and it's all planned out, it never goes to plan.
yeah,
Never goes to plan. There's always something. And like you say, I know I kind of flippantly said about the career is up to you, because I think it is. It affords you so many different experiences. There might not be direct transferable skill sets, because let's be honest, radiography is quite niche.
yeah,
But all of those things that we were just talking about, you can draw upon that to go into management, advanced practice, different sectors altogether, private sector, anything that helps the NHS alongside it. Or actually, you've decided that the NHS isn't for you anymore. Well, then you've got all that wealth of experience and whatever you want to be able to draw upon. Industrial relations rep, something like that. If you want to do that, then you take that into other careers or anything else. I think we frown upon people that don't want to do an NHS job anymore. I've never really understood that. But it's like, if you're going to leave the progression, it's like, oh, very British. It's very, but no, the world, I think you can do what you want with it afterwards.
I think there is a theme. There is a theme that's a common theme that's come out from the podcast so far, and this one's no different, Graham, is that actually people must recognise the portable skills they're going to learn through being a radiographer. And that in itself is a massive asset. Graham, a question for you I like to ask my guests. What keeps you busy and interested outside of work? What do you enjoy doing?
You don't have a life outside of work, do you?
Well, do you know what? This is contrary to belief. There are things that clearly keep you interested and busy that bring you back in the following day.
But yeah, definitely. So we've now got a little daughter, so obviously she keeps me on she keeps me on my toes.
Fantastic.
But I really like Amdram, and I know that that's frowned upon, but I love getting to experience being somebody else.
What's Amdram? What is that? Sorry,
Amateur dramatics.
Oh, blimey! I didn't know the acronym. Amdram. Oh, right. Okay. God, there's a lot. So, what is it? As in, do you go to like a theatre for that, or?
Yeah. So, where I live, I was part of like a group down in Llangollen, where you put on shows and stuff like that. I've done it for years. Love it. I love being somebody else for a bit, and that's not it's not because I don't like being me, but it's a form of escapism and expression that you don't normally get to have in your day-to-day life, or your work life, shall we say.
Oh, that's amazing, mate. Yeah, no, if you probably ask my daughters, they'd probably say, now I know the terminology Amdram, that I like Amdram as well, because the amount of times I might be in the car and I'm doing, there might be a different voice. So we go to McDonald's drive-through and they say, right, Papa, you got to do the voice. I'm like, oh, God, really again? But really inside I'm going, all right then. So without realising it, Graham, we've got a common interest in Amdram, and I didn't know that term before. So
didn't even know it.
Oh, Graham, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate you joining the Skilled Personnel Network as well, the platform. For me, I think it's all about shouting loud and proud about your radiographers like you, and anything. I encourage any listeners that are on the platform to be, to connect with you, Graham, and likewise, Graham, if there's anything really that you want to exercise as part of your, professional development, that's there for you.
Brilliant. No, I think we're frightfully British about all of this, and we don't like to shout our success.
No, we do need to become each other's cheerleaders, and I'm not talking about the bonbons either. Although in true Amdram style, I can take it on. Graham, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so, so much.
No worries, welcome. Thank you.
We will definitely keep in touch. But all the best to you, mate, and good luck with everything. You've been a
Speak to you
star.
soon.
Thank you,
Cheers.
mate. Bye-bye.